Well, it's been a minute. I actually had to go back through my videos to figure out where this adventure left off because I've come so far and a lot has happened since then. So let's get you caught up.
Let's hit super pursuit mode again.
By all means.
As you can see, Lister's doing just fine, aren't you, dude? And yeah, we're not in Arizona anymore. It's green. I am visiting family in Lakeland, Florida, just a bit to the east of Tampa. I left Quartzsite in the middle of February and began my trek east, my second ever cross-country trip, my first from west to east, and well, first time across the south, so that was exciting. It started with known territory. I met up with my friend Carla in Phoenix for lunch. She brought tacos, because that's kind of our thing. Went on to Tucson the next day, where I visited the Pima Air and Space Museum. The Boneyard tour is no longer available, but the main museum has so many cool airplanes of all kinds, lots of historic stuff. I could do an entire video about that alone, but because I'm a bad YouTuber and didn't shoot much video, hey, at least I got a lot of pictures, which I'm probably overlaying on top of me talking right here. After Tucson, I continued west across the rest of Arizona, across New Mexico, and into Texas. Now, I've been to Texas once before, passing through the Panhandle, passing through Amarillo on Route 66. That's not really seeing Texas. This time around, though, I-10 goes all the way across the thick, meaty part of Texas. And, of course, it took me about a week to cross. There was one day where the wind was really, really bad, and I had to stay off the road for a day. Definitely not in Quartzsite anymore. We're riding out a windstorm in Texas. Just got blown off the road in this stuff because it's kind of a tall van. Strong winds, a tall van, and a tall trailer do not mix, especially going down the highway. So I spent a little extra time at a rest area and actually made up lost time by going to my next rest stop at night after the sun had gone down and the wind had faded away. My destination for that leg was San Antonio. I have a few friends there who I haven't seen in a very long time, so I spent a few days there. Had some genuine Texas barbecue, homemade. I mean, if you're gonna do barbecue in Texas, that is the way to do it. And I did it, caught up with some old friends. It was a good time. Speaking of old friends, I met up with Birgit and Tom, who I traveled Route 66 with back in 2021. They were spending winter in Texas and making their way to Florida at the same time I was. So when they heard about my trip, they said, hey, let's travel together. And I said, great. So that's exactly what we did. And then Amy, who we've camped with in Quartzsite before, on the spur of the moment, decided she was going to cannonball to Texas, catch up, and travel with us as well. So we had 3 vans, 4 people, 2 cats, and 1 dog. That is a heck of a convoy. From there on, we stayed off the interstate as best we could. This van doesn't do very well with 75 and 80 mile an hour speed limits, especially towing the trailer. So it was a relief for me to be able to slow down a bit and not worry about getting mowed down. In fact, I ended up right in the middle of the pack most of the time, so I had my front and my back covered. We went on through the rest of Texas, enjoyed East Texas, and then crossed into Louisiana, my first new state since last year when I was traveling. We ended up staying in New Orleans at a casino there, and that was my first opportunity in 2 weeks of travel to actually unload the motorcycle and go exploring. And of course, the bike had a dead battery. I gave it a jump start. It ran, though a little strangely. I was able to at least go for a ride, check out the French Quarter, check out a few other places. I saw Fats Domino's house, and I got a good ride in. I got to see New Orleans. I would not say I have truly experienced it yet, so that might require a return trip at some point. I didn't shut off the engine until it was parked safely back inside the trailer. I killed the engine, I tried to restart it, and nothing. There wasn't enough juice left. But it was safely inside the trailer, so that was a problem I could deal with when I got where I was going. We made our way into Mississippi, another new state for me, and the most pleasant surprise of the entire journey was the Mississippi coastline. I am such a noob to the south, to the Gulf Coast. I didn't even know Mississippi had a coastline. So they say travel broadens the horizons, right? Another big surprise was the Infinity Science Center, which is right on the outskirts of the Stennis Space Center, where NASA tests all their rockets. They had the first stage of a Saturn V on display, the one that was supposed to fly in Apollo 19. Yeah, there was no Apollo 19. You're right about that. After 17, the rocket intended for Apollo 18 launched Skylab, and then 19 was supposed to be next. It never flew, and that's where that stage sits today. There are also all kinds of other fun things to check out there. I love a good space museum. Yeah, that was, again, another surprise of the trip, also in Mississippi. But then we moved on into Alabama. We also spent a morning visiting the USS Alabama battleship. Again, I could do another video all about that. I was a bad YouTuber and didn't shoot video, but I took a ton of pictures walking all over, around, inside, outside the World War II battleship. What's funny is that as a kid, I spent an overnight on the USS Massachusetts, which is actually the sister ship to the Alabama. It's basically an identical design. So it's kind of fun walking around and having that experience, but as an actual adult who has actually interested in history and not just some kid who didn't really appreciate what he was seeing. But that was a good time. And then we pressed on and entered Florida. And then that's where life started to get a little more interesting in the less good way. My engine suddenly developed a misfire. Maybe the spark plug, but most likely the coil pack that goes on top of that number 3 cylinder. If this was a truck, it would be pretty easy to just pop the hood, reach in there and replace it, but because it's a van, everything is just all buried in here. Obviously the doghouse comes off, but everything is just inaccessible. You have to remove the air intake, you have to remove the fuel rail. A pretty invasive repair just to get to the coil. It wasn't something I was going to be able to do in the parking lot. With some consideration, we decided to press on to Lakeland and get me to my uncle and aunt's place and then figure out what to do next. It was a slow and interesting drive without a lot of power, but we did make it. Big thanks to Birgit and Tom. They had my back all the way to my uncle and aunt's place, so I was somewhere safe. The van was having issues, but I was okay. So I wasn't going to break down the side of the road. I was here, so everything good there. Then it was time to settle in and get a bit of work done on the van, see about getting the engine fixed, and also this cracked windshield that I've had since Los Angeles. So I made an appointment, took it over there, and they took one look at the surface rust around the windshield, and they told me that if they took out the old windshield and they saw rust underneath the windshield, they would refuse to install a new windshield. What am I supposed to do? Not have a windshield? They told me I'd have to get it towed to a body shop, have the rust fixed, and then they'd install it. Yeah, so I still have a cracked windshield because that's bull. It hasn't been all doom and gloom, though. The weather here has been overall quite good. I put a new battery in the motorcycle. It's completely fixed. I've had a fully operational bike to go zoom around on while the van's been on the disabled list. But what about the van? It's running on 7 cylinders. I can't get the cracked windshield fixed because it's all rusty. Oh, and on top of that, the last time I drove it, the transmission slipped a little bit. Smokey the Van may be on its last legs.